What if I told you your debt has nothing to do with money and everything to do with a hidden part of your mind you've never faced? What if I told you your debt isn't just numbers on a piece of paper, not just digits on a bank screen? It's something much deeper, a reflection of parts of yourself you don't want to look at. Carl Jung had a word for this hidden part of the mind: the shadow. The shadow holds the memories we avoid, the fears we bury, and the truths we refuse to admit. Tonight, in a small apartment on the east side of Chicago, as rain slides down the kitchen window, James Harris sits alone at his table. He's 38 years old, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt. A half-empty coffee mug beside him, and in front of him, a pile of unpaid bills. The room is silent except for the ticking of the wall clock, loud, slow, almost mocking. And though James doesn't know it yet, this night will change the way he sees himself forever. The phone buzzes on the table. James doesn't even look at it at first, but then the screen lights up. Bank collections. He freezes. His jaw tightens. He stares at the phone until the ringing stops. The silence that follows feels heavier than the sound. This isn't the first time he's ignored a call like this. It's been happening for months. Every ignored call, every unopened envelope, every "I'll deal with it later." It's not just about money. It's about fear. The fear of facing yourself. Jung believed that the mind hides away the parts of us that cause shame or pain. But here's the thing. Whatever you bury doesn't stay buried. It finds its way out. Sometimes as habits you can't break. Sometimes as problems you can't escape. And for James, debt is both. His mind drifts back to a memory he's carried for decades, even though he's never told anyone about it. He was 12 years old, standing in a grocery store aisle with his mother. The cart was filled with food for the week. At the checkout, she swiped her credit card, but the cashier shook her head. Declined. James still remembers the way her face flushed as she whispered, "We'll put these back." He helped her remove half the groceries from the cart, avoiding the eyes of the people behind them. That moment lasted only a few minutes, but it burned itself into his mind. Because debt doesn't start with dollars, it starts with patterns. And patterns start in childhood. Now, years later, James is a successful marketing manager. At least, that's what people see. Every morning, he shaves, puts on a sharp navy blue suit, polishes his shoes, and looks in the mirror with a practiced smile. Then he steps into the office, greeting his colleagues, laughing at jokes, talking about weekend plans. But inside, he's carrying a weight no one sees. Carl Jung once said, "The persona is what we wish to be and how we wish to be seen by the world." James's persona is perfect, confident, charming, in control. But behind that mask, the shadow grows darker. That night, James dreams. In the dream, he's walking down a narrow, empty street. It's dark, the kind of darkness that swallows sound. He hears footsteps behind him, slow, heavy, matching his pace. He glances over his shoulder, and there it is, a figure in the shadows. Same height, same build, but its face hidden completely in darkness. He walks faster. The figure follows. No matter how fast he goes, it's right there, just a few steps behind. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is every part of us we deny. The fears, the failures, the impulses we hide. And for James, that shadow is his debt. Not just the numbers, but the guilt, the shame, and the fear that built those numbers. The next afternoon, real life delivers another blow. James hears the sound of paper sliding under his apartment door. He picks it up. A rent increase notice. His rent will go up in 2 months. He feels his heartbeat in his throat. Without thinking, he walks to the kitchen, opens a bottle of whiskey, and pours a glass. Even though it's only 2 in the afternoon, he sits in silence, staring at the liquid. Because when the pressure builds, most people don't just fight the problem. They fight themselves. They procrastinate. They overspend. They avoid. They numb. We tell ourselves it's about money. But the truth is, facing the shadow feels like facing death. That evening, James drives to visit his sister, Emily. She's always been the one person who can cut through his defenses. They sit in her living room, the sound of her kids playing in the next room. She looks at him and says quietly, "You can't fix this until you figure out why you keep doing it." He shifts uncomfortably, his eyes darting away. Emily doesn't push, but her words linger in his mind. Jung believed that real change doesn't come from sheer willpower. It comes from integration. From looking the shadow in the eye, no matter how much it hurts, and saying, "I see you." Late that night, James is back in his apartment. He's on the floor, papers scattered around him, bills, notices, late fees. His hands are in his hair. His breathing is heavy. Out of the corner of his vision, he sees something, or thinks he does. A flicker, a shape in the far corner of the room where the light doesn't reach. It's the same figure from his dream. He blinks, and it's gone. But he knows it's not really gone. The more you avoid the shadow, the more it owns you. And James is running out of time. James lifts his head. His eyes are bloodshot, but there's something in them now. Something sharp, almost defiant. He whispers into the quiet, "I'm done hiding." And in that moment, he feels it. The shadow, stepping closer. He looks up and finally sees its face. It's his own. Every fear, every mistake, every dollar of debt, staring back at him. And deep inside, James understands. To defeat the debt outside, he must face the debt inside. This is where the real battle begins. The morning after, James wakes up early. The city outside is still half asleep, the streets wet from last night's rain. He sits at the kitchen table, staring at the bills again. But something feels different. For the first time, he isn't trying to push them away. He's just looking. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." James realizes he's been living on autopilot, earning, spending, avoiding, repeating, without ever asking why. Today, he's going to start asking. He drives to a small bookstore he hasn't visited in years. In the self-help section, his hand stops on a worn paperback, "Man and His Symbols" by Carl Jung. He flips through it, reading about the shadow, about how we must confront the parts of ourselves we hide. Standing there between the shelves, James feels like the book is speaking directly to him. It's not about debt. It's about the person he became to survive, and how that person is still running the show. That night, James sits with a notebook and starts writing. Not numbers, not budgets, but memories. Every choice that brought him here. Every moment he avoided responsibility. Every time he spent money to feel in control, to feel important, to feel enough. He writes until his hand aches. And then, without planning it, he writes a sentence that stops him cold. "I am not bad with money. I am bad with facing myself." He stares at the page, knowing it's the most honest thing he's ever written. Over the next week, James makes small changes. He answers one phone call from the bank instead of ignoring it. He opens one unopened envelope. He even calls his landlord to talk about the rent increase instead of pretending it doesn't exist. None of this solves the debt instantly, but it's not about that yet. It's about proving to himself that he can face discomfort and survive it. Jung believed that when we integrate the shadow, we gain strength from it. And every time James faces something he used to run from, the shadow inside him grows smaller, and he grows stronger. One evening, James meets Emily again. They sit in a quiet diner. He tells her about the book, the writing, the small steps he's taking. She listens, a proud smile on her face. "You know," she says, "you've always thought your debt made you weak. But maybe it's the thing that's going to make you strong." James sits back, letting the words sink in. Maybe she's right. Maybe the shadow isn't the enemy. Maybe it's the teacher. A few nights later, James has the dream again. The dark street, the footsteps. But this time, when the figure appears, he doesn't run. He stops, turns, and looks it in the eye. The face is his, tired, flawed, but human. The shadow doesn't move. It just watches. And then it nods. James wakes up with the feeling that something has shifted. That maybe, for the first time in his life, he isn't at war with himself. Weeks pass. James begins selling things he doesn't need, cancels subscriptions he never uses, makes a plan with the bank to pay down the debt. It's slow, it's messy, and it's far from perfect. But it's real. And here's the thing. The numbers are still big, but they don't scare him the same way anymore. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." James is learning that freedom isn't just about zero debt. It's about zero fear of facing it. One afternoon, James gets a call from the bank manager. They've reviewed his payment plan, and because of his consistency, they're willing to reduce some of the penalties. It's not a miracle, but it's proof. Proof that when you stop running, life stops chasing you quite so hard. James hangs up the phone, exhales, and feels something he hasn't felt in years. Hope. Months later, James walks through the city on a crisp autumn morning. The leaves crunch under his shoes. He's not debt-free yet, but he's free in another way. The shadow still walks beside him, but now it's not a threat. It's a reminder. A reminder that the parts of us we fear the most are often the ones that can save us. Debt may have brought him to his knees, but facing it, truly facing it, has given him something no amount of money ever could. And as he disappears into the morning crowd, you can almost hear Carl Jung's words echo in the air. "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." If you love powerful psychological stories that change the way you think, hit subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your mind is your greatest tool. Learn how to use it